Hi everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. I'm Amma Mama. I am just doing a quick update on what I've read this week, my thoughts on them. I actually was able to read quite a bit this past week. I finished 2 physical books and I finished listening to an audiobook that I started probably like a year ago. So I'm going to start with that one. The book that I read is the first in the Outlander series. And I had seen the show on Starz like a billion years ago. I mean, it was probably four years ago now. I think that I had first seen it, and I didn't realize it was a book series at first until somebody in my neighborhood had mentioned something about it. Well, I was never able to get my hands on a copy of it through the library, and I had gotten Audible for while I was working, so I'd have something to listen to in the background and everything. And so I'd started the first book, and the audio recording was like 40 hours long. And so I hadn't finished it. I had other stuff going on. And so I just finished it this week. And I'm really enjoying the series. You may be familiar with Outlander, but it's basically like a time travel romance, and the main character, Claire Fraser, she lives in the early 1900s, 1940s or 50s, I think is when the setting is when she's an adult. But she's married, her and her husband are, fairly happy. She loves them and everything, but she ends up going to, they go to Scotland and they're sightseeing. I think it's now it's been like almost a year since I listened to the beginning of it, but I think they're on like a delayed honeymoon or something that they hadn't done yet, or she had just come back from the war. She was a nurse, but anyways, they go and there's a set of stones, and there might be some like I don't know if it wasn't witchcraft, but like druid kind of stuff going on with like some women in the town. But anyway, she ends up going back in time, and she wakes up in the 1700s. Lots of stuff happens, but she falls in love with somebody there. And throughout the story, you're just hearing, her life both in what was her present day in the, early 1900s, and then what her life was in the 1700s. And she, again, falls in love with a Scotsman there, and she doesn't think she's ever going to get back to her original time, and they end up getting married and all sorts of stuff. And so it's a really good story. It's been really interesting to listen to. And at the end of the first book, something happens. And so I just started the second one also on Audible. So we'll see how long it takes me to listen to it. This one also was like 38 hours long, I think. And so I just finished chapter 4, and there's like 49 chapters. So we'll see how long it takes to get through it. But I am enjoying the story. I think I saw the first like 2 seasons on Starz, so I don't want to go back and try to like rewatch it at this point. I just want to finish the book. But so I did finish that this week. So it was really good. I enjoyed it. I then, as part of what I had picked up for my, I think I had originally had this on my September TBR, and I never got a chance to get to it, so I had moved it to October. But I read Babel, and I went into this not knowing anything really that it was about, other than I knew it was like an academia kind of book because of it being set at Oxford. And so I didn't really know anything that it was about. I didn't know if it was supposed to be fantasy or if it was dark academia. Like, I didn't have any idea really what it was. And so I went into it not really knowing. I don't want to say a ton of stuff just because I did really enjoy this book. I gave it, I'd say like a 4 to a 4.5 stars. The first half of the book, it was really good, but it was definitely like in-depth reading in the sense that there's a lot of history, some of it factual, some of it made up. If you read the intro and the prologue and stuff like that, the author, addresses the things that are fact versus things that she has changed for the sake of the story and things like that. They're things that I would not have known one way or the other because I'm not that much into history that I would have been able to tell you what was factual and what wasn't, other than some of the things that were obviously more like fantasy aspects to the story. But so for the first like half of the book, you're getting the background of one of the main characters very in depth. Some of the other main characters, you're learning about, you know, their lives and how they come to Oxford and what they're studying there and what their purpose is for being there. And they're all foreigners and all of this stuff. And so you're learning all that, and it's setting that background, but I wasn't really sure if I was really enjoying it. It was definitely interesting, and so I kept reading it. There wasn't ever a point where I felt like, oh, I don't want to read this anymore, but I still wasn't really clear what the point of the story was almost halfway through, other than like the things that were obvious. Then later on in the book, after I got past that kind of halfway point, things started to pick up, and you started to see them touching a lot more on, you know, issues of war and racism and you know, how the people who were there at Oxford to learn this skill that other people couldn't do, how they were still looked down upon except for where they were at Oxford, at Babylon, all of that. And so it started getting really good at that point. There is one quote that just really struck me. There were definitely some parts in this I found myself crying a lot, but there's a line where it said, "And he wondered if there would ever be a day that came when all this was unnecessary, when white people would look at him and Anthony and simply listen, when their words would have worth and value because they were uttered, when they would not have to hide who they were, when they wouldn't have to go through the endless distortions just to be understood." And if you've read the book, you know, the context of that helps in the story as well. But it just struck me as really powerful because it's true, I think, for a lot of people even now. And so it was just really powerful. And so overall, I did really like this book. And by the time I got to the end, I think it had a very powerful statement. So it was definitely worth the read. Keeping in mind there was a lot of historical kind of stuff to it. And like I said, if you're a history buff, you might be able to spot what was factual and what wasn't. I wouldn't have been able to tell you, but overall it was really good. I did enjoy this story. The second book that I read and finished this week was My Roommate is a Vampire. And this one I had just picked up because I had seen so many people talking about it on YouTube, and it just looked like a really fun book for October. And so I ordered it and it came in, and I was so glad I did. I had seen on Goodreads some, you know, bad reviews as far as like the writing and some of those kind of aspects to the book. And I think I saw a couple of YouTubers who didn't really care for it, but I will say for me, I thought this book was hilarious. It was so cute. I ended up reading it all in one day. I mean, it was just a really quick read. I mean, nothing real in depth. You didn't have to use a whole lot of brain power to read it. But there were so many times I just found myself like laughing or giggling out loud because it was just so funny. And yes, if you're reading it and trying to like pick it apart, you can definitely pick things apart in this. But for what it was and everything, it was just this fun, silly little romance. And I just thought it was cute. It made me think of something that you could watch as like, you know, I don't know, if Hallmark made like a vampire movie for the Hallmark Channel during October. Like, it made me think of something like that. It was just really funny. It was cute. I liked the characters. She is getting kicked out of her apartment, and she finds a listing for an apartment in like a super nice area, and it's only $200 a month. And so she's like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with it. And her best friend is really sketchy about the idea of her going, but she's like, well, let me go check it out. So she goes to check it out, and the main character, his friend, had basically listed it wrong price-wise. It seems like probably on purpose. And so nobody was replying to the listing because it seemed like, you know, it was giving off like, I don't know, serial killer vibes or something that, you know, why would somebody be listing that nice of a room for rent for $200 a month in the Chicago area that they're in. But so she goes and realizes all of that, and she ends up moving in, and over time things happen. She finds out he's a vampire. Again, that's not really a spoiler. It literally is the title of the book, but she finds out he's a vampire, and with that there's just some like really funny things that happen, and some of it is so silly. But it was just a fun read. I almost wished it had taken me longer because I was enjoying it. But again, if you pick it apart, you'll definitely find, you know, flaws and things to pick apart in the writing or the storyline or, you know, the ending and things like that. But if you just go into it as it's just a fun rom-com, silly book, it was really worth the read. So I'm glad I picked this up. I still have a few books left on my TBR for October. There's 9 days left in the month. Don't know that I will get to all of them. I finally picked up Stephen King's Dark Tower. I think it's the 4th in the series, The Wolves of Kalala. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. And so I started that. I'm about 40 pages in. I think it's going to be good. It started out really interesting, so I'll see what happens. But that one's a really thick book, so we will see. I'm not sure if I'll be able to finish it this week or if it'll be one that's going to take a little while since it is so thick. But I'm going to see how much I can get done. But in the meantime, I hope everybody has a great week. And I would definitely recommend Babel, keeping in mind that one is a little bit longer of a read just because content-wise, plus it's really small font. And so the font is small. It's got a lot of pages to it. The content is heavy in the sense that you have to pay attention. It's not one that you can, if you get sidetracked while you're reading it, you might miss something important. Whereas My Roommate is a Vampire is just a really quick, light read. So I hope you all have a great week, and I will talk to you later.